Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. I am so excited for today's webinar, introducing 2025, the year of personalized enablement. So we're going to be diving into a few different topics here. I do want to wait just a couple more seconds here, give folks time to join and come in the session here. If you'd like to, feel free to jump in the chat and just share, where you're calling in from, any particular points you're interested in learning about today. I love when webinars are dynamic, so I'm not just speaking at the crowd. So feel free to put some things in the chat, and I'll be doing my best to monitor and keep track of that. Awesome. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm Melanie Fellay, co-founder and CEO of Spekit. We are a just-in-time enablement platform really designed around a world where we meet employees directly in their flow of work with the information they need to be successful. We just celebrated our 7th birthday as a company. I started the company just around 8 years ago, really with this vision of rethinking enablement. And what gets me so excited as we enter 2025 is that so many of the ideas and dreams from 8 years ago that, honestly just felt like a dream, now are possible. And artificial intelligence and all the incredible advancements in AI are just unlocking a whole new set of possibilities in terms of how we think about rep performance and enablement. It's transforming roles. And so today we're going to focus just on the aspect of personalization and what that future holds, but really looking forward to your feedback and any questions. So thanks for jumping in the chat. We're going to get going here. So today we'll just talk a little bit about, the AI revolution that's happening around us, what that means for enablement, and a few of the 2025 trends that I'm hearing a lot in my conversations with leadership teams, executive teams, enablement professionals across all of our customer base, whether those are the large Fortune 500s to small nonprofits, growing companies that are looking to really rethink their approaches in 2025. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the future personalization. What do we mean by personalization? What could that mean in the realm of rep performance, rep portfolio? And then we're going to share a few examples of how we're thinking about it, some of the use cases we're excited about. And then we're going to end the webinar with some, real practical takeaways. I think that what I love is sharing, vision of the future and trends, and all that is really valuable. But the question is, okay, great, what can you do today? And so with or without a technology, what are some ways that you can start preparing your team? What are different ways that you can start experimenting with AI in your own role? And so we're going to go over a few tips at the end of this webinar that you can walk away and start implementing today. So with that, right, the AI revolution is here. Everyone's talking about it, right? And so the first one we're just going to talk about is just how generative AI in particular is really rewriting work as we know it. Right? I laugh here. I used this image actually a year ago for a webinar that I did on AI, but I just love this one here around just like every team, every company, every SaaS is coming out with a co-pilot, an assistant, an agent. And if you look at just in the last 5 days, I'm glad that I waited until last night to work on this webinar. But just in the last 5 days, there's been so many, not just like incremental updates, but truly revolutionary updates and upgrades in the world of AI, right? Whether it's OpenAI that introduced their operator, for those of you that haven't had a chance to kind of experiment with this, it's really this new functionality that allows teams to create what we call agents, right? And so agents could be something like, hey, answer questions in our chat support by going and browsing our help center. And so you're basically training this AI agent to go do that work and do those clicks for you. And so you can think about all different ways from, robotic process automation, workflows you can automate, and more that this agent can be used for. But then you're also seeing new technologies like DeepSeek. If you follow AI at all, you'll see that it's everywhere you see in the news. And really what's unique about that is that it's not so different than an OpenAI, a Gemini, or any other, large company, but the way they approached it was at a much, much, much more cost-efficient manner in a way that, frankly, most companies didn't think was possible. And so what that means is that artificial intelligence, the cost of running these large language models, the cost of innovating is going down by the day. And that only means that we're going to see that much more innovation and that much more focus in every company to figure out how can we harness the power of AI and what can we do. And I'm hearing a lot of companies that are both, looking to experiment and eager, but then also have a lot of concerns about security. Their teams aren't fully comfortable with it. And so, one thing that's worth highlighting is over the next year, we're going to see a big shift in what technology looks like, right? According to Salesforce State of Sales report, 81% of sales teams are using AI today. Now, that might be as simple as using a call intelligence sort of solution, right, where it's actually recording your call and transcribing it, and giving you a recording. That's a type of artificial intelligence. But you're also seeing way more of these like assistants or chatbot interfaces in all of your tools, right? So if you think about your traditional SaaS application, right, where it's a lot of forms and rows and tables and list views that your reps need to filter and navigate and search, all of that is slowly transitioning to more of these like chat-like interfaces in your tools. And so that trend is going to be happening more and more. I think, what we're going to start seeing is more and more UI shifts where these user experiences become much more personalized to the rep and much more modular in nature. But you're also seeing this trend where teams don't necessarily feel prepared for this, right? So 78% of sales leaders are concerned that their org is missing out on AI. And what's interesting in that same report is that 33% of reps cite insufficient training on how to use AI as a major issue. And 67% of reps said that their employer does not provide any generative AI training. Now, I'm curious, for those of you that are in the chat, if you've implemented and done a specific AI training, please feel free to chime in and share what you've done. It's an area that we're seeing a lot of opportunity within our customer base, because in a world where more of your reps are now starting to interface with these chat-like interfaces, you also need to train them on how to ask the right questions, right? How to phrase sentences, how to provide context to get the right outputs, because otherwise they're not going to get the responses they need. And so as we can see here, lack of training around generative AI is definitely something that's holding teams back. Now, another trend we're seeing is that enablement is still a challenge for a lot of companies. And at the end of the day, with the pace at which AI is moving, things are only getting faster. Your product shelf life is getting shorter because new features, new capabilities are coming out constantly. I don't know about you all, but our team is rolling out things at record pace. And it's because our own engineering team, development teams are using artificial intelligence in their own development processes to accelerate things like code reviews and bug identification. So all these different incremental improvements ultimately lead to a much faster pace of business. And that creates a huge amount of pressure for enablement teams to try and keep up with all these new products, all these new teams, and everything that your competitors are doing. And what's interesting is that despite 81% of sales teams leveraging AI, right, and all the amazing promises that AI has on productivity, right? I was doing some just quick Google searches last night. I was going to grab some screenshots, but if you just, Google AI productivity gains, you're going to see these crazy stats around, increase your, productivity by 60%, 70% on ads by some of the, biggest vendors that we all know. But what's interesting is that when Salesforce did their state of sales report in 2022, they found that reps spent 28% of their time selling. And fast forward to 2024, they're still only spending 30% of their time selling. All of the rest is on administrative activities. And that's interesting, right? Because here you have this promise of AI, all these tools, all these technology teams and teams using AI, yet the amount of time that reps are spending selling has only gone up by 2%. So there is a bit of a disconnect there, what I consider the elephant in the room. And I think the reality is that despite some of these improvements and gains, AI is also introducing a lot more challenges, right? There's more information that companies and enablement teams are adding to your system, but they're not necessarily able to keep up with updating all your own content. And so you've got a lot of information overload. You're still switching a lot between different places. You're still dealing with systems that have clunky searches. And ultimately, all of this noise, all of this rapid change is creating a lot of distraction and scattered communications. And so all the promises there is still a lot of pain that we're feeling across the board, and content decay is a big aspect of that. And so what you're still seeing is that we're dealing with unprepared reps. I'll share it in a little bit, but 67% of reps expect to miss quota this year. That's a real problem, right? Especially with this competitive landscape. You're also seeing more costly, unavoidable errors. And finally, of course, lost deals. And what was also interesting is that only 35% of sales professionals trust the accuracy of their org's data, right? So as you think about the power of AI, at the end of the day, it relies on accurate data. And so when we think about the garbage in, garbage out problem, right? Garbage in is really like what content is in the system, what information is in the system, what data is in the system that our teams are relying on. And so the question is like, from an innovation standpoint, and something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about is like, well, what mechanisms might we put in place to prevent content decay? right? How can we flag and identify outdated, inaccurate, inconsistent information so that you can actually ensure that the content base that you have is data, up to date? But the garbage out issue is another one, right? Even if your content is inaccurate, right, there are additional mechanisms that your teams can tinker with, or algorithms and tools like our AI Assist or Glean or other solutions like that are all about ultimately limiting what answer gets provided, right? Let's say that your rep asks a question, there's two answers that are conflicting. You're going to have a set of rules that say, hey, when two answers are conflicting, rank the, let's say, newest answer first. Right. But there's going to be a ton of tinkering on these algorithms and these ranking, scoring. And until then, we're still going to deal with the challenge of having this garbage in, garbage out issue. Right. And so I'm seeing a lot of companies that all have these data initiatives. Right. Organizations are finally really taking the quality of their data, the quality of their information much more seriously, because they recognize that while information, knowledge, data hygiene has always been important, in a world of AI, that is the foundation, that is the fuel. And without it, you will not be able to see the gains that you're hoping for. And so instead, what you're going to end up is with this. I took a screenshot from my own personal inbox here. This is my spam folder, as you can see here. But while we're all touting, personalization and outbound, and there's been so much innovation on AI SDRs and all this amazing stuff, at the end of the day, most of my inbox still looks like this. Hi, Melanie. Hope you're doing well. I wanted to follow up, right? Very basic. And that ultimately comes down to some of the, what I would say, not dark side, but the unfortunate side of AI, which is it's also creating the ability to create a lot more junk a lot faster, right? We're giving the ability for reps to generate content at an all-time speed, but it's also creating the wrong habits, right? And the same goes for internally. Sure, you can create content faster, but is it high quality content? And so I'm curious here for this group to answer. We're going to put a poll in the chat, but what percentage of your content do you think is stale? And for this exercise, we're really going to define stale as information that you wouldn't want a rep to rely on, whether that's sharing it with your customer, whether it's relying on it for an answer, because there's either a new version, a new branding, a new feature, a change where that information is no longer accurate. So we're going to put that in the poll. And Kendall here will share the results with me so I can communicate them. But I'd be curious to see what percentage that is. Aaron, 10%. If 10% is your answer, you are, way ahead of the curve in terms of what percentage of your content is stale. I can say for most of the customers I speak to, and even our own analysis of content in solutions like Spekit, that number is closer to 60% or so. And the reality is AI is only going to continue amplifying this problem, right? Because as we discussed, we're dealing with a content throughput bottleneck, right? Your content is losing shelf life faster than you can keep up. And the reality is that you can no longer just throw humans at the problem, right? Because of just the sheer volume of information that's changing. And so what I get really excited about is I think that there's going to be a whole new set of solutions, ones that we're thinking about a lot, that are all around how can we detect when something has changed, whether or not it's actually connected to the content itself. You're also dealing with more junk, right? More easy, low quality content, right? There's a blessing and a curse with all this generative AI. It's a lot easier to create content, but you're not necessarily clearing out all the old. And so you're adding and piling on content without clearing out the information that's no longer up to date. And then finally, the reality is that some of these third-party solutions are so good, right? Whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it, DeepSeek now, because they're crawling the internet 24/7, that unless you have the good enablement and good information, your reps are going to just start relying on third-party answers because that might be more up to date on your competitors' information, et cetera. And so then that becomes really difficult for you to understand, what information are reps relying on? Ultimately, you want them to have a controlled message and value proposition, not necessarily rely on what's on the internet that you may or may not have approved. But because those solutions are becoming so easy and companies aren't keeping pace with the rate of which their expectations are changing, right? We're so used to now using AI in our day-to-day as consumers. Unless companies really figure out how to create that same kind of experience in the workplace, it's going to be challenging. And so as we think about going into this next year, right, as we recap kind of this section on trends, right, 57% of companies, of sales teams think that competition is trickier this year than last year. Competition is heating up, both in terms of the number of competitors, right? We're seeing it even in think of knowledge and search, right? There's new small startups coming up every day that are trying to revolutionize the search problem, right? So competition is heating up at an all-time rate. 67% of sales reps don't expect to meet quota this year, and 84% already missed quota last year. So when you look at kind of like this crossroads we're at, where on one end we've got this incredible, new technology that's changing the way that we work. We're all excited trying to figure out how to use it. We're trying to balance the security concerns and trust and accuracy and data. It's a lot of pressure. And so as we think about next year, I do want to offer something that I think is exciting, right? The first one is that according to the same report, the number one growth tactic for sales leaders in 2025 is improving sales enablement and training. Beyond adjusting territories, beyond hiring reps, what we're seeing and what we're hearing is that the number one growth tactic, and this came from Salesforce Data Report, where they interviewed 5,000 sales professionals, with about 15% of that being sales leaders. So you can assume about 1,200 or so, where of all the things that teams are trying to do, they believe that the biggest opportunity to really make an impact on growth is improving the readiness of their teams and improving the approach to enablement. And so let's talk about 2025, right? We believe that 2025 is the year that personalized enablement is truly unlocked. Now, those of you that are customers have seen us really starting to introduce some capabilities in that direction in the last year. It's been a dream of mine to really deliver on this vision of anticipating our users' needs and recommending the exact information they need. We've made some incremental improvements, and this year I think we're really going to see a big unlock, not just for us, but for every company. Because at the end of the day, AI can solve problems in a way that previously wasn't possible, right? Where we've been used to these like really rigid content structures where you have to tag and label and have these very specific, naming conventions and hierarchies. All of that kind of vanishes. The need for that vanishes in a world where AI can leverage what we call knowledge graphs, which allows you to ultimately track the relationships between all different types of content. Like, hey, this case study is related to this product is related to this use case, right? And vector databases, which basically allow you to find similarity as well. And so there's new types of technologies. I won't go into the depths of these, but there's new types of technologies that are making the whole idea of helping helping the needs of the rep, the context of the rep, and the information that they need come together in a way that just wasn't possible just a few years ago. And that's leading really to a whole new world of possibilities, right? Where in the past, the approach has been, hey, let's browse folders, and then maybe let's filter, and then maybe let's search. Last year was really all about asking, the chatbot and being able to get questions. I believe this year is really where we start getting to recommendations, anticipating a rep's needs before they even realize that they have it. And we're really entering that next wave of enablement, right? If you look at the evolution of enablement, right, just-in-time enablement and this personalized enablement is really just an iteration on the last few, right? Where we started with really manual training manuals that were printed and PowerPoints, right, that we train teams on. Next, the evolution of enablement was like, great, now let's put these in these centralized repositories where you can organize the content, you can create courses, you can organize your courses so that you can create onboarding tracks. The next wave was, hey, turns out long-form content isn't the best when it comes to training. Let's break that up, chunk it up so that it's easier to consume and understand. That really introduced the concept of micro-learning. Just-in-time enablement is really the next evolution of that, which is, hey, great, let's break up your content. Let's centralize it. Let's break it up. Let's make it digestible. And let's leverage AI to really deliver it at the exact moment that a rep needs, whether that's learning a new process or finding a piece of information or answer to sell more effectively. And so we really envision a world and building towards a world where every rep has their own contextual personalized enablement assistant, right? That could be guiding them, answering their questions, recommending the perfect content, assisting them on a task, and eventually coaching them. And it's following them around their day-to-day, whether they're prospecting, et cetera, to give them those answers. And so we really see a world where every step of the sale, right, whether it's prospecting and you're looking for guidance on your personas, your messaging, your talk tracks, your playbooks, right, to drive more pipeline, whether you're preparing for a meeting and you're looking to, rehearse and get up to speed on the latest objections, you want to learn about the latest changes on your battle cards and competitors, product questions, whether you're following up after a meeting where you're trying to find the latest resources and get your questions answered to the product questions that your customer had, or whether you're preparing a contract to send to them and want to make sure that you're including the right discounts, the right information, the right security docs. We believe that process today, where all these activities oftentimes take up that 70% of time that reps aren't actually spending selling, All of those tasks can be significantly decreased, the time spent on them, by meeting reps, anticipating their needs, and ultimately delivering personalized enablement. And that comes down to really understanding a rep's needs, right? Who are they, right? Reps are going to have different needs depending on when they joined. Are they a brand new rep? Have they been on the company for 2 years? Have they sold this kind of product before? Have they been successful? How fast did they ramp? Are they a top performer or a bottom performer? All this context ultimately helps us determine what might a rep need. Then what are they doing, right? What task are they doing? What did they just do? What are they doing next? Who is the customer they're engaging with? What kind of industry is the customer in? What is the customer interested in? What is the use case? Have we sold to this customer before? And then finally, what are the reps' needs, right? Are they trying to get questions answered? Are they trying to prepare before a meeting? All of that context, all those signals live across your technology stack. And we believe that in order to unlock personalized enablement, you really need to take all this context in order to recommend content to solve their needs. So when we think about that in an illustrative example, right, let's take an email, right? So let's say that I'm a rep, I just got off a call and I'm following up to secure the next meeting. And on that call, my customer had a few questions. So I've got the context from the task, right? So I've got the draft that I'm writing in my email. And then I've also got additional context that lives across our technology stack, right? Maybe you have a couple call recordings from Zoom or Teams or Gong. You've got information about that opportunity or that deal in Salesforce. You might have additional information about the contact that you're reaching out to in LinkedIn. All of this context paired with that email can then be really leveraged within what we call an AI engine, a content recommendation engine, where we use a number of different techniques, whether it's natural language processing to understand what is it that the email is trying to say and accomplish, right? Large language models to be able to actually generate answers, RAG systems to be able to go and retrieve the right appropriate content and see if there's any matches, and then scoring mechanisms and ranking mechanisms to decide of all the content that we found, which one should be prioritized first based on recency, views, applicability, performance on other past deals. And then finally, ultimately, the end output being to the rep, hey, here's exactly what you need in this very moment. That kind of recommendation. And so while this is an oversimplified view of what a traditional, enablement recommendation engine might look like, you're going to start seeing this across your tech stack in more and more content and enablement solutions, which is basically how can we take this context about what a user is trying to accomplish and then match it against all the content and information that we have in our system to ultimately then recommend the best answer or resource for them. So if we think about a use case where it's about, finding that best collateral to share with the customer, right? That has a real positive impact. 86% of buyers are more likely to buy when their sales goals are understood by sales reps. I remember a few years ago, Salesforce had done a case study on how we had basically supported our customer, Southwest Airlines, through their transition during COVID and really moving their teams to working remote more effectively and centralizing their knowledge. So it was an amazing case study. It had Salesforce's branding all over it, and our team loved it. Now, before I realized it was too late, all of a sudden our reps were sending that case study to every customer they could find. Now, we had terrific case studies with, let's say, nonprofits. But even if they were reaching out to a nonprofit, they were sending that giant enterprise transportation Salesforce branded case study rather than a case study that was really specific to that specific customer's needs and use cases. That immediately starts things off in the wrong way, because that small nonprofit is like, well, I don't have the resources of this large enterprise. I don't have the same pains and needs. This isn't necessarily for me. And so when you think about, how can we help? And I know many of you guys have felt the same pain where you have this amazing collateral, but your teams are relying on what they've saved on their desktop or what they're using. The question is, like, do they even know it exists? Do they not know it exists? Can they not be bothered to find it? This is really where I think personalized enablement and recommendations can really bridge that gap for your reps, where they don't need to go looking for it. They don't even need to know that it exists, but we can anticipate that need. Right. And what Gong shows from their data is that there is an 18% increase in win rate when follow-up is really tailored to your buyers. And so there's a lot of statistics that show that sending the right information, making it feel personalized to your buyers, their specific needs, has very real impact on your revenue. And then on the other side, another use case is really helping your reps feel more prepared to win deals. right? At the end of the day, it's almost impossible to keep track of all the changes that are happening in your competitive landscape, right? And as we said earlier, 57% of reps think that competition has gotten harder. So how can we make it impossibly easy so that if a competitor is detected on a call or in an opportunity or is mentioned in an email by your prospect, the rep has the latest information they need to understand exactly what they need to know? And even taking that a step further, not just, hey, here's your suggested battle card, but here's what you need to know, because since the last time you competed against this competitor, or since the last time you saw this battle card, this has changed. And that's that delta there around like, how do I learn what I need to master? Because I don't need the same battle card recommended to me 40 times if it hasn't changed. I just want to know if something's changed that puts my deal at risk, that puts my knowledge at risk. And I think that's really where there's a huge opportunity to leverage AI to deliver that kind of personalized support just in time for your reps and make sure that the enablement that you're creating, all the content you're creating ultimately gets used. And Sudeep, to answer your question, yes, I do believe that content automation is right around the corner too. I won't spend too much time talking about it in this webinar, but at the end of this webinar, I'll be sharing a link to something I've been working on where I speak a lot about that. So stay tuned. And really, you know, where I think AI can have the biggest opportunity is solving this bucket here of what reps don't know they don't know. Right? They don't know that content exists. They don't know that something's changed. They don't know that feature released because they missed that update. They weren't engaged. They didn't pay attention, you name it. This is ultimately the bucket where AI can have the biggest impact. And so another quick poll here, just to get a quick answer. What percentage of content would you estimate your teams use today, let's say on a monthly basis, out of your entire library? So if you think about your entire library of content, of information, what information do your teams actually rely on a day-to-day basis? Awesome. And we'll share these polls at the end. Great. So you might be asking, well, okay, this all sounds exciting. This sounds interesting. Like, what might this actually look like in practical use cases? And so today I'm going to share a couple illustrative examples in our solution. I actually used, what I would consider personalized enablement for me last night while I was building this presentation. And so just to highlight a couple examples here, you'll see here I branded Spekit for this webinar, so it's all Spekit AI. But I was actually looking for a few of these stats. So we've uploaded a bunch of our content. So just to show you what that looks like, we've updated, for example, let's say, what percentage of reps think that competition is increasing? I can ask here, and my AI Assist is going to scan all of my content and surface answer. So here it says 57% of sales professionals say the competition has gotten trickier since last year, and it's pointing me specifically to the resource. And so last night, while I was building this presentation, it's end of quarter for us, so I was a little bit behind on building this deck, but I was looking at poll stats because I came across a Salesforce report recently. I thought it was filled with phenomenal statistics. We've got a few other reports of our partners that we leverage, but this one had some amazing ones. And so I was starting to just ask questions, and within seconds, because that content was here and it's in the system, I was able to really easily access it. And then I was able to actually vet the source. So the content will load here side by side. So we've uploaded that State of Salesforce report, phenomenal report. We'll share a link to it at the end here. But as a rep, I can actually, find the information in there. I can search within the document, but of course, I can just ask those questions in the AI Assist. I also was looking for things like, hey, do we have a Spekit mascot? And so as I was thinking about building the slides, I was also asking like, hey, do we have some images or do we have some graphs? And so here you'll see that we have some guidance on our brand. We have our mascot here, and I can just copy paste that image in there. So these are just some like very simple examples that I was using yesterday. These aren't as applicable to sales reps, but just to kind of showcase how I might use it in my day-to-day, where you can get questions and answers from your content. Now let's actually go through a rep example. So let's, I thought I'd do something a little bit meta here, but let's say that you all joined this webinar today and our reps were going to reach out to you afterwards to say, thank you for attending today's webinar on personalized enablement, where we showcase capabilities like our AI-powered content recommendations and AI Assist functionality, right? Maybe that they would send a benefit like, hey, Spekit can help you recommend just what you need, leverage AI, centralize your sales enablement, and hey, here are some next steps, right? We might want to schedule some time with your sales enablement team. And oh, by the way, here's a quick video of our new AI content recommendations, right? This might look like the kind of email that one of our BDRs, one of our reps might send to one of their prospects that they'd invited to this webinar, right? Think of it in your world. This could be the kind of follow-up that your rep sent after a webinar, or it could even be just like everyday prospecting after a demo. Now, normally, if I was trying to find, so here I'm trying to showcase different capabilities. Maybe I'd want to include a one-pager on AI content recommendations. I mentioned a video here. Normally, I'd have to go into Google Drive or wherever it is, start searching, start filtering, finding information. What we really want to accomplish with personalized enablement is if we open up here the Spekit sidebar that is special branded for today in bright pink, you'll see that what Spekit is doing is it's scanning that email to understand what might that rep be trying to communicate here. So here you're seeing that immediately the first thing that it's recommending is this AI-powered content recommendations video. You can click into it and make sure that it's the right one. Great, it is the right one. And of course, I could go ahead and share it with my prospect here that they could access. I'm also seeing an internal resource on Spekit AI recommendations that I might want to see. I'm seeing a Spekit for Salesforce one-pager, et cetera. But I'm also seeing a few different themes here. So in looking at this, the recommendation engine suggested some most relevant content, but it's also saying, hey, if you want to like hone in on just, for example, AI recommendations, here's a bunch of content that might be really specific to that. For example, you might want to share the chapter on this book that Mel potentially wrote on personalized enablement here. And you'll see here that this is a Google Doc. So as a rep, I can pull this up. I can see, hey, what is this? I didn't even know that our CEO wrote a book. Can I share this? What's going on? And I could even open this and view it directly right in Google Docs, right? So the idea is making it easy for them to find the information, view it, et cetera, and of course, share everything that they would like to do. Here you can see that there's the webinar introduced in 2025. There's the webinar. I actually synced this in just an hour ago, but you'll see here that these slides are the exact ones that I used in the webinar. So if I wanted to share those out, you'll see that I've made it externally shareable. Our team could easily share these slides out afterwards with a prospect that would be looking for tips afterwards. So again, the whole idea is that a rep might not know that all this information exists, but we want to be able to bring that forward for them and surface it where it's going to be relevant to them. Now let's go through another example. So let's say, and here you'll see a bunch of different videos. Another example might be, hey, they might have questions on what resources they might want to share. So for example, let's say, how should I explain the difference between Spekit AI Assist and content recommendations, right? So here they can simply ask that question. And again, it's going to scan all through the information to find that information. And so you can ask questions, you can get answers. It's going to scan through all of your content here. So Spekit AI Assist is designed to provide instant answers. AI content recommendations proactively suggest relevant content based on user behavior and context, right? So let's say that this was a question that my customer had just asked me. I can check the sources, make sure that they're valid here. And then I could even then go in and simply copy paste that into my email if my customer had asked me a question and edit it. So the goal is that we're bringing that information to the surface for them, making it really easy for them to access it directly in that flow of work. You can ask follow-up questions, or here it's saying, hey, based on the page that you're on, you might have recommendations here as well. So again, the whole idea is that there's a ton of different ways that your reps can engage with that content and view it. Now let's experiment here live with another use case. So let's say that actually, I don't want to write about personalized enablement, right? I want to know whether Mel is, staging this whole thing and whether this is really possible. So let's change it. So Spekit for Sales Playbook. So let's say instead this email was not about personalized enablement, and instead it was, thank you for attending today's demo where we discussed how you can use Spekit to manage and reinforce your sales playbooks, right? So let's say that we're changing up the email. Say Spekit can help recommend just what your reps need. You can create sales playbooks on your industries, products, and personas. I'm making this up, etc. And we're going to say, here's a quick, let's say, resource on sales playbooks in Spekit, right? Making this up. I'm changing this just to kind of illustrate, right, that you can make changes, and based on the changes that you make, right, whether I changed the answer, the content, again, artificial intelligence within seconds can take in this context and is now going to have a completely different understanding of what you might be trying to accomplish in this moment. So instead here, within seconds, instead of saying, hey, what's most relevant now isn't anything about AI Assist and content recommendations. Heck, this customer might not even be comfortable with AI. What we've detected instead is that they're interested in Spekit for Sales Playbook. So here's a video you might want to use. Or here's our overview of how we support Sales Playbook. Or here's this one-pager PDF on Sales Playbooks. And again, they can share that link, right, with their customer. I'm going to make that up here. And boom, within seconds, that customer will be able to see that resource. So if they send that to their customer, you'll be able to share that PDF here with them, and they'll be able to log in and see that resource. That took seconds, right? They didn't have to go look for it. They didn't even need to know that this information existed, right? For example, in our instance, we've been really with our team enabling them on all things AI recommendations, AI Assist, because that's the latest and greatest functionality. But we are a phenomenal solution for sales playbooks. But our newer reps, they might not have heard us talk about sales playbooks as much. So a newer rep that just got off a call with a customer is like really focused on sales playbooks might not realize that there's all this incredible content in here that they could leverage. But again, this is the role that AI can bridge by anticipating their needs and proactively surfacing that content right there for them. Alrighty, so I'm going to show just one more example here since we're running up on time. But again, the idea is that, of course, it works in email, but we really want to think about, when from a technology standpoint for us, we're really focused on like where are reps spending the most time interacting with enablement content, finding content, looking for answers, getting questions. And we've really done a lot of research with reps themselves and found that it's typically during call preparation, call follow-up. Right? So either when they're trying to like get up to speed where they're reviewing old calls, they're reviewing their opportunity, they're trying to get up to speed, make sure that they've done their latest research, they're up to date. And there's a lot of things that have account research that, obviously Spekit can't support. But when it comes to the knowledge about your products and services, that's where it can be really helpful. Or during follow-up. So here you'll see that, and we actually just released this week capability support for outreach, Clary, in addition to, of course, Chorus, Gong, SalesLoft, a few other platforms too. But the whole idea is that wherever the rep is working, again, the functionality is going to work the same, right? So here, this call happens to be with a customer where they have an existing content management platform. They're struggling with adoption. They haven't seen, all the benefits. So here, Spekit is going to recommend content here that might be relevant to them. For example, here are some benefits. Here's how it might compare with that solution. Here is general resources on Spekit for content management, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these, again, are coming from this context here. So anyway, hope that helps in showcasing just a few examples of where things are going. There's a lot more personalization ahead. I don't want to reveal all the secrets we have for this year, but this is happening. It's happening now. There's still a lot of potential to improve these different kinds of technologies, but it's happening at rapid pace. And so, I really encourage you all to start thinking about and start preparing for a world where change management is simplified, right? You're not having to blast out information in 5 different channels and emails to make sure people see it. No, just you can feel confident that AI will be able to do that job for you and anticipate that when that rep needs to know that new piece of information, whether they're doing that process for the first time, whether they're coming across that objection for the first time, the information will be surfaced to them, right? It's also a world where your reps really receive personalized content, right? Marketing has been trying to crack this code for years, right, on their website and ads, and they've optimized everything they can. AI is transferring that too. But what about the rest? What about your reps and the content that they're sending with your buyers? And how can we make that as personalized as possible? One that we didn't talk about as much that I'm equally excited about is a world where onboarding is completely tailored, right? A perfect example is that over the last month, we've had a few employees return, right? One of our customer success managers, one of our reps just joined back in the last month. Now, they already know a lot of information. They don't need to start from scratch on what is Spekit and what is the value of it. What if there were some simple ways that your enablement platform could assess a rep's readiness and existing skills and knowledge based on everything they know about their past? And yes, Samantha, Christian, that is true. What if they could assess everything that we know about the rep's background, right? Looking at their LinkedIn, potentially some internal assessments, and come up with a profile to then recommend the content that's going to be the most valuable to them. Or what if, as they take different steps, as they come across different prospects, the training that they need naturally, ultimately is surfaced to them, really shifting from onboarding to everboarding. And then finally, where coaching and feedback are personalized, right? Right now, we put so much pressure on managers to be those coaches in the moment. Now, there's a lot of visibility that was previously not accessible, right? With conversation intelligence, with call recordings, but that context paired with your enablement can create a whole new world of role playing and a whole new world of being able to really focus on personalized coaching. And so with that, we talked a little bit about the future. I do want to make sure that, regardless of where you're at on your journey of AI, I do believe it's critical that you start preparing, that you start, getting your team prepared. And so I did want to share just a couple practical tips and takeaways around how you can start thinking through how you, make some small shifts to your enablement program, or even how you practice your own skills. And so with that, the first one is for you, right? If you are a professional that is ultimately responsible for enabling your teams, I really recommend that you start experimenting with different content curation tools. Now, caveat here, please make sure that it meets your organization's security standards. I myself am very skeptical of different tools out there. So we make sure that any tool that our team uses has been vetted by our legal team. That is super critical. So please make sure that if you test new solutions with your company's data, you're getting permission. There are some bad actors out there when it comes to data. But assuming that you have permission, assuming that these tools are vetted, start playing with it, right? Play with AI-powered writing tools. And a few examples, right, could be helping you come up with the training script, right? So, hey, we're launching this new product, dumping the product brief from your product team in it, and coming up with, help me come up with a training script for this upcoming session that we want to do, right? Or it could be, hey, we just recorded this live training. Help me turn this into bite-sized reinforcement afterwards. There's all sorts of different ways that you can leverage AI, both in your preparation as well as in your reinforcement to save tons of time, but start really like stretching the possibility and getting familiar with yourself on how to use different props and like where AI is really good, where it isn't, so that ultimately you can provide that guidance to your teams as well. Another great one is really turning your trainings into bite-sized reinforcement. So a few things that I'm recommending to companies where, in the past, a lot of the content that we had was like really monolithic, long documents, lots of text, right? As you think about your reps and making it more readable, if you have some of that content that just needs a refresh, take that long form content and put it into an AI tool and just say, hey, can you help me add some bullet points and reformat this so that it's way more legible for a rep trying to get a quick glance and reinforcement? There are a ton of ways that you can do that. Another example is leveraging the collective intelligence of your team, right? So as we think about your sales leaders, right? I don't know about you guys, but I've always trying to get what is in our sales leaders' heads and into content that our team can actually leverage. Not just our sales leaders, but our best performing reps, right? And trying to find time to get them to actually document their best practices and find them is impossible. This is another really great place where AI can help, right? Ask for a 30-minute session with your top rep or your sales leader. Let's say that you wanted to focus on what are the top 10 objections that we want to make sure that the sales team knows how to handle right now. And literally schedule a Zoom meeting, interview your sales leader, ask them specific questions, and just get them to speak at you for an hour, and then take that recording and leverage AI to translate that and convert it into enablement content. Very simple prompts can help you do that, and you'll see that you'll get new content fast and easy. I also encourage you to do the same with call intelligence scripts, right? If you want to come up with like, what are the top 10 discovery questions that we should be training our reps to be asking, or what are the top objections they should expect on a first call, right? Download 10 of your most recent call recordings where deals went from stage 1 to stage 2, or where deals were canceled, and put those into an LLM and see what they can do. The possibilities of how you can create more effective, concise, and data-driven enablement is remarkable. And so that's just like writing tools. Don't even get me started about video creation. I don't know if you guys have heard of a tool called Synthesia. I haven't used it in a while, but I was on site with one of our customers in the UK, and they were showing me how they've basically just transitioned to using Synthesia, which allows you to create basically avatars, which I also had some reservations again at first, but to basically create high quality training videos internally at record pace. And so there's just so many different opportunities for you. The other one is really to start sharpening your data skills, right? The role of enablement is going to change, right? Whereas you used to spend a lot of time actually, really thinking through creating the best content and formatting and designing training and courses, that time is going to shrink. And where a lot more of your focus is going to have to reorient is how you can be more strategic, right? And I say this from a place of love, but the reality is that just in the last month, companies left and right are continuing to do layoffs. I went to a conference at the end of last year where it was a room full of enablement professionals. And when asked how many of you are either on the market or looking for to change jobs the next 3 months, 80% of the room raised their hands. There's an immense amount of pressure that companies are putting to become more efficient. And so in order for you to rise above the fold, you have to start reorienting your thinking. You have to start being that more strategic partner to your sales leaders, right? The reason why their RevOps partners are so important is that they're bringing insights to the table constantly, right? Around territories and conversion rates, et cetera. There are so many incredible insights that you can get from your tools, or that you can get from just sitting down and listening to your reps, right? Start a weekly update that you send to your sales leaders every week with, here are the top objections that we heard on calls this week. Here are the top areas for improvement that we're identifying. Start surfacing insights, start playing with your data more, start pulling data from Salesforce, pairing it with your call intelligence tools, familiarize yourself with how to analyze data. There's incredible AI tools that can help accelerate those efforts too, but get comfortable with doing analysis, because the future of enablement is much more focused on how you can leverage insights to ultimately build your enablement programs, than it will be on the basics of content creation. And then finally, train your reps on how to get better answers from AI, right? If your team is embracing AI, and we go back to the beginning of the stats where it said that I think it was something like 66% of teams don't get AI training, you can be different. You can be ahead, right? In this environment, whatever we can do to help our reps have a slight advantage is a big one. So start by doing a training on proper prompt engineering, right? The word engineering is intimidating here, but it's really simply saying, how do we train people to ask questions to get the best possible answers, right? And so you can create a training. There's a ton of resources online. We have one too that we can share. But basically, giving your reps guidance on how to phrase and how to ask questions in order to get the right comprehensive answers, right? Next, start building a prompt library, right? So for example, if your teams are starting to use tools like Perplexity or Clay or others to do account research and prospect research, rather than expecting each rep to come up with their own prompts, start building a prompt library of all the different ways that your reps can just copy paste those prompts into the different tools that they use to get the answers that they need. Similarly, do the same for yourself. If you're starting to write prompts that work really well to create great enablement, create a prompt library. We're seeing a ton of our successful customers starting to create basically topics of prompts, one for their admin teams on prompts to create content, and one for their sales teams or end users on how to basically like prompts on for different parts of the tasks and jobs. Those are phenomenal. And they're getting a lot of views, frankly, as well. So enable your team on how to start leveraging AI, remove some of the manual efforts there and do that. And then finally, promote ongoing adoption, like make it fun, right? A lot of reps are starting to experiment in their day-to-day. Start, incentivizing and rewarding them to share that. Hey, if you found like the secret hack to do an account research faster than ever before, don't keep that to yourself. Create a channel where your reps are incentivized to share things. Do some contests where like there's special rewards, have your top-down reinforcement, get your executive team. Most CEOs I'm speaking to, in fact, all of them are trying to figure out how they can like ultimately help their teams take advantage of AI. Going back to the beginning of the presentation, 87% of sales leaders are afraid that their teams are not going to be taking advantage of AI enough. So how can you start creating a culture where your team embraces it? And I believe that this is where, again, you can play a big role in doing that by leading with enablement on the matter. And then finally, and this goes back to what we were talking about, start preparing yourself for the future, right? The future of content is not long form document. It's going to be bite-sized. It's going to be data-driven. And so start experimenting with how you can start chunking and breaking down your content. Start with your onboarding. If you have 45-minute videos in your onboarding program, you're doing something wrong. The content itself might not be wrong, but break that up. Make that into 9 5-minute videos instead. It's going to be way easier for you to update the different sections or segments of that video as they change. And it's going to be way easier for your reps to consume it and to go find that information later. Really embrace chunking, bite-sizing your content for better adoption. And that will gradually help you start shifting to an everboarding model so that when you are ready to fully embrace personalization, and frankly, when the technology, catches up, right? We're not quite there yet, but there's a lot, there's a lot of ideas. You'll be able to really take full advantage of what's coming. So start looking at your content structure, start looking at your content, and start really embracing what the future of content looks like. And so with that, we're going to end with 10 minutes to go. If you have any last minute questions, please post them in the chat. But I hope today's conversation was interesting, that you either learned something, that it inspired you to start, experimenting a little bit more. It's a topic that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about. I am going to be announcing a book soon here on the future of enablement in the world of AI. And so if you're interested at all in a copy, we're going to be talking and exploring about topics around contextual learning, the future of content decay and how we prevent it, the future of content where it's much more dynamic in nature and data-driven. So I loved your question. I think it was Sundeep earlier, but it's really been a passion project of mine, and I'm really excited to share. So if you're interested, I believe the link will be shared with you in the chat for you to sign up and request a first copy. It will be launching in the next couple months. So with that, thank you all for joining. I really appreciate your time. Have a wonderful rest of the month of January. For those of you that are end of quarter is tomorrow, like ours, Godspeed, good luck with everything, and looking forward to talking again soon. Thank you all. Bye-bye.